picture a scene for a moment. You're sitting at your desk.
We've all been there.
Right. The laptop is open. The cursor is just, blinking steadily on a totally blank document. The coffee is warm. Your phone is put away. And you know exactly what you need to accomplish. In fact, you genuinely care about doing it. You might have even planned this, specific block of time perfectly the night before.
Telling yourself, tomorrow morning, I am tackling this head on.
Exactly. But instead of typing that first sentence, you feel this strained, invisible wall go up. So you open a new tab just to check the news real quick.
Just a quick glance.
Yeah, just a glance. Or you remember an email you forgot to send. And then, 10 minutes slip by, then 30, then an hour.
Yeah.
And then right on schedule, that heavy sinking guilt arrives. You just stare at the screen and ask yourself, why am I like this? What is wrong with my willpower?
It's an incredibly universal experience. And, when you hit that wall of paralysis and that subsequent guilt, society and honestly, your own inner monologue usually offers one very loud diagnosis, which is that you lack discipline.
Right, yeah.
The assumption is just that you're lazy or, you simply need to force yourself to care more about the outcome.
Because the default advice is always to just push harder, right? To just sort of grind through the resistance.
Exactly.
But in this deep dive, we're going to look at a completely different way of understanding this paralysis.
Yeah.
We are exploring the Deru Kailo 9-layer framework today.
Yes, and I'm very excited to get into this source material.
Me too. And the core paradox we are unpacking today is this. You can know what to do, care about doing it, and still not begin.
That's it, exactly. And I want to be clear right up front, we are entirely avoiding, generic productivity advice today.
Oh, thank goodness.
Right. There will be no talk of superficial brain hacks or finding a new morning routine to arbitrarily crush your goals.
No 5 a.m. ice baths required.
No ice baths today. The central thesis of the Deru Kailo framework is that procrastination is rarely just a failure of discipline or motivation. Instead, it's a mismatch between the layer where your plan was made and the layer where your action must begin.
Okay, but let me just challenge this right out of the gate, because if we strip away the framework language, aren't we just talking about taking the easy way out?
What do you mean?
If I have a report due and I choose to watch a YouTube video instead, that feels like a simple failure of discipline. I mean, I'm choosing short-term comfort over hard work.
Sure, it looks that way on the surface.
Right. So calling it a mismatch sounds suspiciously like a highly sophisticated excuse for avoiding effort.
Well, it sounds like an excuse only if we misunderstand how human action is actually generated. Motivation and discipline, which are the things we constantly blame, right?
Yeah.
They live in what Deru Kailo calls the intentional layer. This is the highly evolved part of your mind, the prefrontal cortex, which sets goals, maps out careers, makes promises for the future.
Sure.
Exactly, the planner. And you can have absolute unwavering discipline at the intentional layer. You can desperately want to finish that report, but action does not execute in the intentional layer.
Oh, they'll say.
To actually start typing, the command has to pass down through your physical body, your emotional experience, and the structural reality of the task itself.
So it's like the intention is ready to go in the penthouse, but the elevator is completely broken on the ground floor.
That is a perfect way to put it. The plan exists in the future. The resistance exists in the present.
The resistance exists in the present. Wow.
Right. Your future self can make all the promises it wants. It can imagine the relief of having a clean house, or the pride of a finished project, or the health benefits of a morning run. But here is the critical distinction. The future self creates meaning. The present body pays the cost.
The present body pays the cost. Well, if the present body pays the cost, that perfectly explains the biological appeal of mindless scrolling, doesn't it?
It really does.
Because when I choose to scroll through social media instead of writing a report, my present body incurs zero physical or emotional cost.
Zero.
It requires no cognitive load, no emotional vulnerability, no physical exertion. My limbic system, which is just, entirely focused on present moment survival and saving energy, just takes the path of least resistance.
Exactly. Your nervous system is functioning exactly as it was designed to function. When you sit there, staring at a blank document, you are trying to solve a present moment friction problem using a future moment tool.
Using the intentional layer.
Right. You keep telling yourself, I just need to decide to do it, but you already decided. The decision layer is not where the blockage is located.
So procrastination is often a mismatch between future meaning and present regulation.
Yes.
If you try to use sheer willpower to overcome a dysregulated nervous system, you're using the wrong tool for the job. You're basically applying a software patch to fix a hardware problem.
Precisely. And if you misdiagnose the problem as laziness, you naturally prescribe shame as the solution.
Oh, yeah. The guilt trip.
Yeah, the guilt trip. But shame only increases physiological stress, which actually drives the body further into avoidance. So we have to figure out where the action is actually blocked in those lower layers.
Okay, let's diagnose those lower layers then. If the intentional layer isn't the culprit, what actually stops us from moving? The Deru Kailo framework outlines 4 hidden types of procrastination. So let's start with the mechanics of the work itself, which the source calls structural procrastination.
Right, structural procrastination. This occurs when the task you've set for yourself is conceptually clear but structurally vague.
Give me an example of that.
Well, we frequently assign ourselves tasks like work on the presentation or fix my finances or get my life organized.
Oh yeah, get my life organized is a classic one.
Exactly. And to your intentional layer, those sound like perfectly reasonable goals. But to your physical body, those are not executable actions. They are these large abstract containers.
Right.
Your brain understands the goal, but your motor cortex literally doesn't know what physical movement to initiate next.
It reminds me of trying to climb a sheer brick wall. Like, it doesn't matter how motivated the climber is or how much discipline they possess. If the wall is entirely smooth with no specific handholds, the body literally cannot move upward.
Yes.
Without a defined shape to grab onto, you just stand at the bottom looking up, feeling completely stuck. When the task is vague, discipline has nothing to grip.
That is so true. The brain recognizes that translating a massive abstract concept like, do my taxes, into a sequence of physical actions requires a massive amount of cognitive energy.
Right, it's exhausting just thinking about it.
Exactly. So to conserve energy, the brain generates friction. You experience that friction as a sudden, overwhelming urge to go, organize your spice rack or check your email.
It's a sudden urge to vacuum the entire house.
Right. And the solution is not to yell at yourself to care more about your taxes. It is to reduce the task structurally. You have to carve the handhold.
Okay, so the task goes from do my taxes to, open the file cabinet and pull out one W-2 form. But what happens when the handholds are perfectly clear and we still can't move? Because I've had days where I know exactly what the very first tiny step is. There's zero vagueness, and yet I remain completely frozen at the desk.
Well, that brings us to the second type, which is experiential procrastination.
Yeah.
Here, we move from the structure of the task to the feeling of the task.
The feeling.
Yes. Sometimes the task is perfectly clear, but approaching it creates an unbearable internal state. You feel this wave of dread, shame, anxiety, or intense pressure.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
When this happens, you aren't actually avoiding the work. You are avoiding the feeling that comes with the work.
I instantly think about putting off an email where you have to admit you made a mistake to a client.
Oh, that's a perfect example.
Because you know exactly how to open your email client. You know how to type the words. The physical and structural layers are completely aligned. But anticipating the feeling of professional embarrassment triggers a biological response.
Right, because the nervous system does not neatly distinguish between emotional danger and physical danger. Yeah. When you think about writing that apology email, your amygdala senses a threat. In this case, a threat to your social standing or professional safety. It triggers a mild fight, flight, or freeze response.
And usually it's a freeze response.
Often, yes, in the context of modern work, it's a freeze response.
Yeah.
Your autonomic nervous system literally immobilizes you to prevent you from walking into that emotional fire.
And again, we usually misinterpret that biological freeze response as a character flaw. We sit there thinking, it's just an email. I am so weak for not sending this.
Which just makes it worse.
Which ironically adds a new layer of shame on top of the existing embarrassment, making the emotional fire even hotter and the freeze response even stronger.
Exactly. Sometimes the task is not too hard. The feeling of starting is simply too loaded. If you don't regulate the nervous system first, the intentional layer's commands will just bounce off a brick wall of physiological resistance.
That makes so much sense. I want to take this a step further, though, because sometimes the blockage feels even deeper than dreading a difficult email.
Okay, yeah.
A few years ago, I decided I was going to learn a programming language just to expand my skill set.
Nice.
It was low stakes, nobody was grading me, And the structural steps were incredibly clear. I just had to follow a basic tutorial. Yet, every single time I sat down to do a simple coding loop, my mind went completely blank, and I would suddenly find myself walking to the kitchen for a snack.
The classic kitchen trip.
Right. But looking back, it felt like if I failed at this simple tutorial, it meant I wasn't smart enough to adapt to the modern world. Like, it felt existential.
Well, according to the Deru Kailo deep dive we're exploring, you were experiencing symbolic procrastination.
Symbolic procrastination.
Yes. This occurs at the symbolic layer, which governs our identity, our status, and our self-image. We all construct these mental models of who we are. Perhaps you view yourself as the smart one, or the capable problem solver, or the creative force.
Right.
A task becomes symbolic when it's no longer just a task. It becomes a test of that core identity.
So the blank page isn't just a space to write words. It becomes a judge asking, are you actually talented, or have you been faking it this whole time?
Exactly. And just like the emotional threat we discussed earlier, an identity threat triggers an intense protective response from the brain. If you sit down to write and the writing is terrible, your mental model of being a good writer is completely shattered.
Which is terrifying.
It is highly destabilizing to the human psyche. If a task becomes a verdict on who you are, avoidance starts to look like protection.
Avoidance starts to look like protection. That's, wow. Because by not starting, the potential is perfectly preserved.
Yes.
Like, if I never actually commit to learning to code, I never have to face empirical evidence that I might struggle with it. The fantasy of my own limitless capability remains completely intact. The procrastination is essentially a bodyguard for the ego.
A bodyguard for the ego. I love that. And that protective mechanism ties directly into the fourth and final hidden block, which is meaning overload. This occurs at the meta layer.
The meta layer.
Right. This is the layer of your larger life narrative, your legacy, your ultimate purpose. It involves the heavy question of, what kind of life am I building?
See, there is a massive contradiction here with standard self-help culture.
Oh, entirely.
Because we're constantly told that to beat procrastination, we need to connect our daily habits to our massive lifelong goals. We're told to build vision boards, to think about our legacy, and to remember our ultimate why.
Right, the big picture.
But the Deru Kailo framework suggests that focusing on the big picture might be the exact thing paralyzing us. We're overloading the present moment with far too much meaning.
Think about the physics of it. If you put a massive rocket engine on a standard bicycle, the bicycle doesn't go faster, it just shatters under the pressure.
Oh, that's a great image.
The human nervous system works very similarly. Imagine someone sitting down to update their resume for a major career pivot. If they're simultaneously thinking, this career change determines my entire financial future, my family's security, and my ultimate happiness.
The task just collapses under the weight of all that meaning. It ceases to be a resume update and becomes a battle for survival.
Exactly. When a task carries that much future hope and that much fear of imagined consequences, starting feels incredibly dangerous. The underlying thought is, everything depends on this. I cannot afford to make a single mistake.
Which isn't motivation.
No, that is panic. And panic is an entirely unsustainable fuel for deliberate action. When a task means too much, the first step has to mean less.
Okay, so we have these 4 distinct hidden blocks. Structural, where the task is too vague and the brain refuses to waste energy deciphering it. Experiential, where the feeling of starting is so loaded that the nervous system initiates a freeze response. Symbolic, where the task becomes a terrifying verdict on our identity. And meta, where meaning overload crushes our ability to take a simple step.
You've got it. But understand the architecture of these blockages is useless if we don't know how to navigate them in the moment.
Right.
The core practical method of the Deru Kailo framework is actually quite simple. It's this: locate before you force.
Locate before you force. Okay, instead of just a theoretical list, let's apply that to a specific running scenario. Let's go back to that person sitting on their couch, laptop open, paralyzed by the thought of updating their resume for a career change.
Okay.
They know they need to leave their toxic job, they care deeply about doing it, but they're completely frozen, endlessly scrolling on their phone instead. How do they walk through the diagnostic layers to unblock themselves?
Well, the first diagnostic question they must ask is the next step clear? This tests for a structural block.
Right, because for our person on the couch, the task in their head is likely change careers or overhaul my resume. Those are massive conceptual containers. There is no physical handhold.
Exactly. So they must reduce it.
Yeah.
They explicitly redefine the task. From overhaul my resume to, say, open the Word document, delete the old summary paragraph, and list my last 3 job titles. They have to make the instruction to the motor cortex undeniably specific.
Okay, but let's say they do that. The task is now highly specific. Yet, as their finger hovers over the trackpad to open the document, their chest tightens and their breathing gets shallow. They still can't click.
Then they move to the second question. Does starting feel emotionally or physically unsafe? This checks for an experiential block.
And if thinking about their toxic job and the terrifying prospect of interviewing brings up a wave of dread.
Then they have to lower the emotional entry cost to bypass the nervous system's freeze response.
But how do you trick a highly evolved nervous system into feeling safe when the task inherently involves risk?
You use what Deru Kailo calls a soft start. The person on the couch tells themselves, I am only going to open this document and look at it for exactly 5 minutes. I am not going to finish it. I'm not going to apply for jobs today. After 5 minutes, I have absolute permission to close the laptop and walk away.
Ah, so you completely remove the pressure of completion. The goal is no longer performance. The goal is just gentle reentry. You're basically proving to the amygdala that making contact with the work will not result in immediate destruction.
Exactly. But what if the fear runs deeper than just the discomfort of the process? Then they must ask the third question. Has this task become a test of identity?
Checking for the symbolic block.
Right.
For our resume updater, the internal narrative might be, well, if I can't make this resume sound impressive, it proves I haven't achieved anything of value in the last 5 years. It proves I am fundamentally a failure.
And when that narrative is running, every keystroke carries existential weight. The repair here requires active, conscious self-talk to sever the task from the identity.
How so?
They have to tell themselves out loud, this is just a piece of paper formatting my work history. It is a draft. It's a tool, not a mirror. This document does not dictate my worth as a human being.
Which leads right into the fourth question. Does this task mean too much? We're checking for meaning overload at the meta layer. Our person on the couch is likely viewing this resume as the magical key to their entire future happiness, wealth, and life satisfaction.
Exactly. They have attached their entire life's legacy to a Tuesday afternoon. To unblock the action, they have to deliberately shrink the meaning of the moment. They have to remind themselves that they are not permanently altering the trajectory of their destiny today. They are just typing a few bullet points.
You make the action delightfully, boringly ordinary.
Yes. And if they have diagnosed all of that, there is one final grounding question.
What's that?
What is the smallest physical action that would make contact with the task?
Dropping everything out of the conceptual realm and into the physical layer.
Yes. The present body does not understand launching a new career phase. It understands putting the phone face down on the table or placing both hands on the keyboard. The very first action should require so little physical effort that the body has no reason to resist it.
I love that. I do hear a lingering objection to all of this, though.
Let's hear it.
If I go to my boss or my partner and say, well, I didn't finish the project because I was experiencing meaning overload at the meta layer and my nervous system initiated a freeze response, that is not going to fly.
No, probably not.
Doesn't this entire diagnostic process risk making us incredibly fragile? Like, are we just coddling ourselves and avoiding accountability?
It's a very valid concern, but the framework argues that this is actually the only path to genuine accountability.
How do you mean?
Compassion and self-understanding are not the opposite of responsibility. They make responsibility possible. Relying on shame and self-attack is actually the most fragile strategy of all because it is biologically unsustainable.
Oh, I see.
When you misdiagnose a structural block as a moral failing, you don't fix the block. You just feel worse, which leads to more avoidance.
Because if you accurately locate exactly why you are stuck, you actually possess the power to repair the mechanism and move forward. You aren't demanding perfection from yourself, but you are demanding curiosity. Why am I stuck, and how can I clear the path?
Exactly. Responsibility becomes highly practical when it becomes accurate. You aren't letting yourself off the hook. You're finally learning how the hook actually operates.
Right.
And it is important to note that sometimes the block is giving you vital information. Sometimes your body is resisting because you are severely burned out and genuinely require rest. Sometimes you are hesitating because the path you're forcing yourself down is fundamentally wrong for you.
Wow, yeah.
The goal is not to turn yourself into a frictionless productivity machine. The goal is self-understanding.
So we return to that opening scene. You are sitting at the laptop, the document is open, you feel the familiar magnetic pull to pick up your phone and escape into the scrolling void. But this time, the narrative changes.
You do not ask yourself why you are so lazy. You do not try to summon a tidal wave of willpower to force the outcome.
You simply locate the blocked layer. You ask the questions. Is the handhold too vague? Is the emotional cost too high? Am I terrified this will prove I'm a fraud? Am I carrying the weight of my entire future on this one keystroke? You locate the friction, lower the stakes, and find the smallest physical movement to make contact with the work.
Exactly. You do not always need more discipline. Sometimes you need to stop forcing the plan and locate the layer where action is blocked.
It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If our procrastination isn't a symptom of laziness, but rather a deeply ingrained protective instinct, what if the tasks we avoid the most intensely are actually the most honest compass for what we truly value or, what we are most terrified of losing? Something to think about next time you catch yourself organizing that spice rack.